And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Wednesday morning's flying weather graphic. Big push of IFR, northern Bering Sea here coming into the southwest coast. And up the Yukon River Valley there, now associated with the front, extending back down toward the Alaska Peninsula. A break behind that, and then another surge of IFR coming into the far western Bering Sea and Aleutians there. Areas of IFR up here over the northern interior to the North Slope and Arctic coast. Another zone of IFR, eastern North Gulf Coast area, down into the northern panhandle. And not too bad, Bristol Bay, Kodiak Island, up into south central Alaska, mainly Cook Inlet, Kenai Peninsula. And as you head southeast along the southeast coast, conditions improve, becoming VFR. And for the afternoon, still this frontal boundary right through here, and areas of IFR with that, especially down over the Kuskokwim Valley to western Cook Inlet, marginal VFR, Kenai Peninsula up into Cook Inlet, and areas of IFR down across Kodiak Island. A narrow band now of IFR for the North Gulf Coast into Lynn Canal Glacier Bay, Elfin Cove, Yakutat in those areas, and then pretty good as you head south, but marginal VFR along the coastline, marginal VFR along and south of the Brooks Range up here in the northern interior. And it looks like some IFR lingering there for the central Arctic coast. But the North Slope, VFR, big area VFR here, central eastern Bering Sea into the Yukon and northern Kuskokwim deltas. And IFR here for the western Aleutian, southwest Bering Sea, as well as from about Golovin Nome area out to the Bering Strait, lifting north of St. Lawrence Island. And then that kind of sags southward to St. Lawrence Island on Thursday morning with IFR into the west central interior. Another area of IFR down here over the Kuskokwim Valley from the northern Bristol Bay area up along the western Alaska Range. More widespread IFR, Prince William Sound, Matanuska Valley, Turnagain Arm down to Resurrection Bay, and then across the Copper River Basin into the northern panhandle, but the southeast portion of the southeast coast, staying mostly VFR. And then for Thursday afternoon, here over the northern part of the state, areas of marginal VFR with some areas of IFR and a little bit of VFR, especially over the eastern North Slope. And then scattered areas of marginal VFR in the central part of the state, down into the Susitna Valley area, Copper River Basin, southeast Copper River Basin, mostly over the mountainous terrain, IFR there. That extends in across much of the southeast coast. VFR for the Gulf of Alaska, Prince William Sound, Kenai Peninsula there into Cook Inlet, Kodiak Island, the Alaska Peninsula VFR, right up to Nunivak Island. And then not too bad actually over the Bering Sea now, some improvement here with pretty widespread IFR breaking out over the Aleutians. Eastern Aleutians though staying in some marginal VFR. Actually, it'll be areas of marginal VFR moving from west to east here across the Aleutian southern Bering Sea throughout the entire day Thursday. And for passes Wednesday, tomorrow, Anaktuvik, IFR trending toward marginal VFR. So the lowest conditions, both Anaktuvik and Atigun, will be in the early morning hours and then better in the afternoon, the way it looks at this point in time. And for Lake Clark and Merrill, IFR. And rainy, mostly IFR, windy, marginal VFR heading east to Isabel. Call it marginal there as well, and Mentasta though becoming VFR. Back to marginal VFR for the Matanuska Valley, especially over toward Tanita Pass and Portage. Marginal VFR, and Wednesday looking pretty IFR-ish for the Chilkoot White Pass areas. And for the freezing levels at the surface here around the Pribilof Islands, then down across Kodiak Island, just south of the Alaska Peninsula, hugging the eastern North Gulf Coast, and then down across the Panhandle, 2,000 feet there over the southern Panhandle, and almost up to the North Gulf Coast here in the Gulf of Alaska, and some 2,000-foot freezing levels up there over the Yukon Flats area. And from there, looking at icing, here with this front coming in to the interior, kind of breaking up as it comes in, but still some areas of considerable moderate icing here, especially Kodiak Island up into southern Cook Inlet, western Alaska Range into the Kuskokwim Valley, and along the south coast of the Seward Peninsula to the Bering Strait. Narrow band of considerable moderate rime icing up there for the Central Arctic coast, mostly north of the western and eastern Arctic coastal areas, and then another zone of heavier icing out here coming into the western Aleutians. And jet stream showing cold upper lows here at 33,000 feet into the northwest Bering Sea, another center back toward Kamchatka Peninsula. And we've got westerly flow just south of the Aleutians up to 165 knots. Westerly flow about 140 knots coming across the Alaska Peninsula in toward Kodiak Island. Lighter southwest winds here, becoming southwest, south-southwest about 100 knots there, nearer just east of Yakutat. 3,000 feet, southwest winds, 75 to 95 knots here, but that's south of the Alaska Peninsula, about 70 knots there across Kodiak Island, turning more south-southwest, 65 knots across southern Alaska here. Lighter over the central and southern southeast coast. And out west, again, the strongest winds mostly south of the Aleutians, into the Bering Sea, though, looking at westerlies 50 to 65 knots. And at 3,000 feet, just south of this low center, westerly 70 knots there for the western Aleutians. Broad area southwest flow across the Bering Sea, 40 to 50 knots right into the coast here. Front right about through here. And along that boundary, looking at southeast winds at 50 knots here ahead of the front, and then becoming southwest and lighter winds behind it. Even stronger winds there coming across Kodiak Island into southern Cook Inlet, light to the east and across the Panhandle. Turbulence-wise, quite an area of moderate turbulence expected tomorrow here. Much of the western interior pushing eastward here along in advance of that front. South central Alaska, Kodiak Island, all of the Aleutians, and then severe turbulence, surface to 5,000 feet from about Amchitka Island to Shemya and Attu.